in a college environment, where this crowd always delivers. And I've told some people in the industry about this conference, that it's students and professionals working together to put on a conference, and nobody's ever heard of that before. So you should feel very good about doing something very unusual and productive with this event. I appreciate the chance to talk today about reality. And there's no better place in this part of the country to do that than here at CMU, where Jim Wojcik and his colleagues have a healthy obsession with teaching about what's happening for real in PR. And there's a new reality that envelops our business on a daily basis. It's a reality that too many in the PR business just don't want to talk about. They don't want to admit it to themselves. In corporations, they don't want to admit it to their bosses. In agencies, they don't want to admit it to their clients. A lot of us are too afraid for our own self-preservation, and change is always hard. This reality, for those who have chosen to pay attention to it and adapt to it, has forced a lot of change, significant change, sometimes painful and even costly change. But if you work in media relations, you need to understand that the media is much smaller now than it used to be. There's less of a chance that they'll cover what you think is your story. If you're in the business of trying to get news coverage, that's bad news. If you're in the business of trying to keep stories out of the news, sometimes it can be good news. Even if that's what you want, it's tougher than ever to get messages out, which is what we're supposed to be doing. We used to think that media and PR worked hand in hand. They needed us, we needed them. But if we need them so badly, how do we live without them? That's a question we often have to ask ourselves, and I'm going to give you some thoughts on that here this morning. But first, let's look at the facts. According to the Associated Press, which in and of itself is a smaller news organization now, 1,400 cities across the country have lost a newspaper of some sort in the past 15 years. So that's about 1,000 outlets a year that no longer exist. 45%, nearly half of the people who worked in local newsrooms in 2004 have had their jobs eliminated since then. At the same time, unless you're in a handful of one of the country's biggest markets, commercial radio news reporting does not exist. Even local TV news, once the primary source of news from coast to coast and a cash cow for the companies that own TV news operations, they've seen an erosion of viewers and a contraction of jobs. And I still hear from misinformed clients and board members of clients all the time about the outlets that need content, that they're always looking for content. We need to stop that. It's a myth. There's way more content now than there are places for it to go. There are many causes for this. I could have done a whole presentation this morning just trying to explain it. But I'll try to break it down as simple as I can. The way we all get information has changed. That change has been led by us, by consumers. We want what we want, when we want it, how we want it, where we want it, and only the stories we care about. We want that all weeded out for us. That has broken a news model that existed for generations. Advertisers are trying to keep up with us, and they can't. As we splinter ourselves as an audience, we become harder to reach. Outlets can no longer charge a ton for a mass audience. At the same time, these news outlets are owned by big corporations, and Wall Street demands of them exceptionally high profits. And the only way for that to happen, unfortunately, is shoestring budgets, really small staffs, and most significantly, less news. Less news means less coverage of almost everything. And that means fewer opportunities for what we used to consider PR. It's a trend that's been getting worse, and there are no signs that this is going to reverse or get any better. Make no mistake, this is bad news for democracy, but unless we change the way we work, it's going to be bad news for PR. 20 years ago, I worked with somebody who used to say that there was a home for every lost puppy. In other words, if you played it right, every story could be made into news somehow. Every client wish has come true. Everyone can be positioned as an expert somewhere. 20 years ago, there was a beat reporter for everything. There's a trade magazine for everything. There's a local newspaper everywhere. Today, though, this is literally today is one of them. There are many days where it feels like 3 big stories a day get covered and that's it. The reality is that many days it feels like the media covers government, crime, sports, and Trump. And if you have anything else, it's really hard to get attention. Here in Michigan, a few auto stories get sprinkled in. So business news is covered. In most of the country, it's really hard to break through. If you want a feature story today, who's going to write it? It takes time. You want a profile story on somebody, that's probably going to be K to play. Today, you run the risk of having to answer this question. What if you had a press conference and nobody showed up? That's the reality we face. There are good stories, and then there's news. Sometimes those things overlap, but often very good, very interesting, very compelling, very important stories just aren't news. We have to be honest about that. Often a story that everybody would do once upon a time might only get done now by one news outlet. It doesn't get seen by as many eyeballs. It doesn't move the needle, as they say, on reputation. But it's also not the end of the PR process. It's a step along the way. And this has impacted everything in PR and the way we think about everything we do, as it should. On the agency side, in many cases, we just don't have as much to do for some clients as we used to. We can't charge them as much as we would have 10 or 20 years ago. We've seen fee deflation in some cases. So now to make up that difference, we need a higher volume of clients. On the corporate side, it seems PR people spend more time in meetings now than they used to spend talking to journalists. That just comes with the territory. So I know what you're trying to figure out today is how do you create ROI? And given this reality, how do we create ROI for our clients? If you work in-house, for our employers, students, how do you create ROI for the investment you're making in your education, given this environment? Most bluntly, think about it this way. How do we maintain our careers when so many journalists are losing theirs? I have some advice on that today. And you see I'm smiling, because I think there's good news for us as a profession and all the bad news. We have an opportunity in front of us. We have to make ourselves valuable. Wherever possible, we have to take advantage of opportunities to make ourselves invaluable. We have to cut the stupid BS. There's way too much spraying and pray going on out there. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? You make a media list, you send your release out to this gigantic media list, and you sit back after spraying, and you pray that somebody's going to cover the news story. It seems ridiculous given what I've just told you about the environment, but I hear it from journalists, and I hear it from PR people. It happens all day, every day. It's got to stop, because it doesn't work, and it's ineffective. And sooner or later, our clients and our employers will want to stop paying for that, as they should, and they may want to stop paying us altogether if we don't show value, and that doesn't show value. How about no more press releases to talk about how excited we are about something? That's not news. No more calls to journalists asking if they got the information that we sent them about stories we know deep down they would never cover. How about no more thinking about mass media when it doesn't exist anymore? It's long past time to start thinking about personal media, about niche audiences who are consuming information differently. How about no more thinking about a story, one story, a single news story, as the brass ring? Instead, I think we should all focus on providing value. So I have some thoughts about how we can all be more valuable. And I have a list of things that I think we should be. And I'd appreciate it if you would listen to my list. One of the things I teach in media training, always warn the audience before a list is coming. A list is coming. Number one, be customer focused. You have to treat your clients as your customer, of course, but see the media that way too. Like any competitive business, the best culture of customer service is going to win. And like anything in customer service, you be accessible, you're responsive, you deliver on your promises. Like anybody else who's good at customer service, know your audience. When we're talking about media, consume their products. Monitor their social media accounts. Understand what they do and what they don't do. Any company you do business with that treats you right will do all those things. It's up to you as a PR professional to treat media the way you would want to be treated as a customer. Another B, be journalistic. Make the news decision before you ask the journalist to do it. If it won't fit, don't pitch it. If it doesn't speak to the audience that they're trying to reach, or if it's just plain crap, never let it out of your office. If it's news, though, treat it accordingly. That decision can be made at your desk. You don't have to leave it entirely to the journalist to make. Know the difference between a good story and a news story with the current definition. Another B, be creative. Get the visuals ready ahead of time and offer them. Figure out how to make it an on-set story when the TV station adds newscasts but doesn't add crews. That happens all the time. They announce they're doing another hour of TV. Are they hiring anybody? No. Do they have anybody working out in the field? No. Figure out how to bring the story to them. Don't schedule a press conference and expect everybody to show up when a conference call would be fine. Another B, be respectful. When you're working with journalists, respect their inbox, respect their voicemail, respect their texting. Avoid form emails that everybody gets that are the same, or emails that start out, I hope you're well, or somebody you've never met before. Get to the point. That's being respectful. Another B, and I alluded to this earlier, but it bears repeating, be honest. Be honest to your employer, be honest to your client, be honest to your colleague about what's news and what's not. Be strategic. Think about sophisticated techniques. Learn them earlier in your career if you can about exclusives for reporters, embargoed stories, how to sneak in news someplace on a day that's busy with stuff coming out of Washington otherwise. Be strategic about the best way to use a quote in a release to convey information. So a lot of times quotes get copied and pasted into news stories. So say something. Get your message out. How to take one clip from one story and use it everywhere online. Let it live. Let it reach a bigger audience than it would otherwise just in a newspaper. That's being strategic. Maximum visibility. If it's a good story, but not a news story, think about how you can tell it yourself with the resources that you have. You don't have to rely on media. And that leads me to another B. Be multi-platform. Think beyond traditional media. Can you produce the story that news can't or won't do? Can you get it in front of the target audience? Maybe with a good video, maybe with something actually interesting on social media that doesn't feel like wallpaper on somebody's feed. What can show up on a website if you control a website? Would a newswire release make something more searchable if it has good keywords? Remember, it's our job to connect messages and audiences. Nobody ever said it was our job to do that exclusively through news stories. It's about putting target audiences together with well-crafted, credible messages. That's our job. And another B, to wrap up the list of B's, be professional. Above all, please never be the annoying PR person. Always practice professionalism. Show why you're the expert inside and outside of your organization. Be professional to everyone. That's going to help deliver value and ROI. When I was invited to come up here and focus on this topic, I crowdsourced a little bit. And I went on Facebook and I asked journalists who I'm connected to, what they would say if they had the opportunity to speak to this subject. How to deliver ROI, how to be valuable in this changing media environment. So I'm going to read you some of my responses. And this one is from one of the bluntest business reporters I know. Know the outlet's audience, know the reporter beats, know the publishing schedule, know the publication's content preferences. Provide contact information, full titles, and as much context as possible. Don't write a press release with a sunshine throwaway quote that doesn't advance the audience's understanding. Don't waste time with, we're happy with our new relationship and look forward to working with Acme Widgets, said CEO Wiley E. Coyote. No shit. Provide phonetic pronunciation for unusual names. Provide ages, provide a headshot. Tell us who the new hire is replacing, and if possible, what happened to them. That's a lot, I know. But this is unvarnished candor right from the newsroom. This is from a columnist, statewide columnist, who said, I think the most important thing is to understand who you're pitching. I don't get pitched much as a political columnist. When I worked at Cranes, I'd regularly field pitches from PR people about businesses that were outside our coverage area and not on my beat. Then she says, parenthetically, I think it's okay to call the wrong beat reporter if that's the only contact you can find, but be clear, you're only looking to be pointed in the right direction. And of course, make sure that there's actually a story there, and it's the kind of story the publication you're pitching is likely to cover. It shows you how common that spray and pray BS is, doesn't it? She goes on to say, as a columnist, I really only interact with PR people when they're the gatekeeper for an interview or with a comment from their clients. In those cases, I'd say, do your best to meet our deadlines. And if you can't, explain that, so I'm not putting off publication waiting for a quote or interview that's not going to materialize. A few specific things, she adds. Never ask for a written list of questions in advance. Hope you all know that. Don't offer a written statement when I've asked for an interview, unless it's just impossible logistically. And never ask, quote, what's your angle? Reporters do hate that. Engage in an actual conversation. Another one from a newspaper reporter. Customize the pitch for the individual reporter. The smartest ones I get are from people who clearly understand what I'm covering. And don't just read the first paragraph of the last story I wrote. These are the pitches I listen to. Also pick your spots. This is from a close friend of mine who's an investigative reporter. Covers mostly government. Capital letters, my advice for all PR. Acknowledge inquiry. Don't wait until a full response is ready to acknowledge an inquiry has been submitted. That's it. Pretty simple. But it shows you how often it doesn't happen. Another one here that I think is great. Sell the story, not the item or event. What would make your neighbor care if you told them what your group is doing, launching, showcasing? We don't want to speak with the CEO. We want to speak with the person who will be impacted by your product, event, etc. Finally, yes, answer us. The more you ignore inquiries, the more it feels like there is something lurking behind the silence. This one from a former journalist who's now branched off into entrepreneurial ventures. Great advice. Don't forget podcasts. Like I talked about, multi-platform. I have a good relationship with a few PR groups in my niche. I'm surprised more don't reach out. It's such a great resource and easy for their clients to share afterward. This is some really good advice. He lists 4 things from a guy I think is one of the best reporters in the state. Number 1, know what I cover. My Twitter feed is a good place to see what I'm writing about or mentioning. Number 2, give me advance warning of an event. You can't plausibly argue that the conference or speaker you want me to cover was only put together 24 hours before it was happening, which is when you emailed me about it. Give me some warning so I can get it on my calendar, even if the notice is just a heads up for planning. Number 3, be selective in what you pitch me. The best PR folks only send me stuff they know I'm interested in or stuff my audience would be interested in. Because I'm not getting a deluge of stuff from them, I trust these folks when they say that something is worth covering. The odds of me covering or writing about it go way up. Number 4, don't promise I can talk to the top exec or decision maker unless I actually can. So as of this month, I've been out of news for 21 years. I'm glad I did that work, but I'm glad I don't do it anymore. I really like what I do, and I hope I can do it for a long time. But in order for that to happen, I'm going to have to continue to do it differently. And no matter where you are in your career, you're going to have to make that same commitment, or you're not going to be able to do this as long as you hope to. So I thank you for your attention, and now I'm hoping for some conversation.